Hey guys, welcome back to another video on Samguinius 40K. I just wanted to actually take a quick moment to say thank you so much for your patience. I'm sure probably a lot of you are wondering, what happened to the videos, what happened to the tournaments and events, but just to summarize it, sometimes life throws you curveballs and you got to deal with them, whether it be personal, work related, family. It's always important to take that time to just make sure that you're putting the right effort in the right areas to make sure you kind of see things through, so you can come out all right on the other side. So, without further ado, coming back into 40K after about a 3-month hiatus, I was on a pretty decent high from the WTC with a pretty awesome run that I put together individually, and then of course with Team Canada with our best finish there. That was really exciting for us, and hopefully bigger things to come next year, and would be awesome to be part of the process again. And then obviously ended up going to a large Canadian event. Obviously it was a major. Ended up losing to the dreaded Leviathan Nids, as we all know, has been a pretty bad matchup for our beloved Sons of Baal. So bit of a tough one there, but overall been pretty happy with those two performances. And then, like I said, going into a bit of a hiatus, you don't really think the meta is going to change too much, but heck, we're in uncharted territories here with ninth edition, and we're pretty late here in the game. I know the rumor mills are obviously running. 10th is what we call around the corner, so constant updates. Voten shook things up. Demons definitely shook things up. I had to catch myself up to speed quite a bit with the meta and how I was going to deal with it, how I was going to prepare for it, and what my army could do into it. So without further ado, I have a few things I'd like to cover today in this video. And please, as always, you guys know that I'm pretty open to criticism. Constructive criticism is obviously most definitely welcome. Let me know if you like these kinds of videos, if you want something else, if maybe it's a bit too long, maybe too much like a lecture. By all means, I'm open to it all. So let's dive into the first point I wanted to cover today, and that was just a quick little GT recap from this past weekend. So like I said, didn't have too much practice. I signed up for this event a few months ago. Didn't even know if I was actually even going to go at first, but figured, hey, I'm going with some of my best friends, in the game and in life in general. So I was super excited for at least that aspect, and decided to go with a list. And we're not going to go too deep into that list right now. It's very much like my similar archetypes. For those of you who know my Sam style Blood Angel list, it's very, very close to what I normally run with a few tweaks. And then obviously I incorporated more of a Death Company heavy approach this time, just so I can build Fury of the Lost as a secondary into my game plan, which obviously did pan out, as we'll kind of get into. But I will put a list down below in the description for you guys to see. And as always, if you have any questions on it, I will do my best to get back to you in the comments below. So bear with me. But going into this tournament, I was paired round 1 of the 5 into a Drukhari list, and that was actually a pretty, I guess you can say, standard by current days Drukhari list, with a Tantalus, however, thrown in there, which was definitely interesting. Shout out to my opponent, Mike. He was really awesome, and it was a bit unfortunate for him that he lost a Tantalus turn 1 to a cheeky Forlorn Fury Death Company play. I say cheeky, not that cheeky, just very straightforward. Just wanted to get that thing off the table. But he was a good sport, and the game definitely kind of just snowballed a bit once I was able to kind of hem him into a certain area of the board and basically set up some counterplay if he were to try and push into me. So I was able to go first, kind of set the tempo, and I believe that game ended 95-36. So that took me into round 2 against New Imperial Guard, which we were playing with, as long as you have the Codex, which was actually I really thought was cool by the organizer. So huge massive shout out to Justin Del Mastro from the Grinning Demon. It was also his birthday weekend, so massive happy birthday to him as well. And it was really cool to see what New Guard could do. Some of the new stratagems were awesome. Some of the just general actual play they had on the table was actually just really interesting. I thought it was awesome. Now, the one thing we kind of saw very quickly was we were playing on Data Scry Salvage. So that mission I have always historically found favored Blood Angels in general, and even more so into a pretty heavy tank heavy guard list. And he actually brought, I believe it was I forget, it was the Baneblade or the Shadow Sword, one or the other. It was basically a quarter of the list, and you know, that took up a lot of points. He was a hero for bringing it. So you know, huge shout out to Danny for an awesome round two. And that game also, like I said, just, you know, I think he went first, but actually that allowed me to kind of give him a lot of problems, you know, in the mid to late game, just by kind of pressing into him and doing what Blood Angels do best. So I ended up taking that one 100 to 37, and then that led me right into the final round, excuse me, of the day one, which was I was playing into a very interesting demon list, and that was actually my first ever, never practiced before, but into the new demons, first time playing into them. So that was really cool. That was definitely a new experience. I thought it was interesting how they could be on top of you very soon, and I didn't understand that pressure until it was truly in front of me on the board. Now I know you can obviously do the math on when you have these, you know, HQs that are allowing these guys to come in, you know, 7 inches away, especially with like the negatives on that they can bring out on leadership, or if you're near the deployment zone, they can come within 3 of you. Like, there's a lot of really interesting mechanics that you don't really, you know, grasp until you're in the thick of it. So definitely was a bit of a learning game, and I don't know if I could have done better if I had expected a bit more, but massive shout out to my opponent. I mean, that was probably the toughest game of the weekend, you know, just because he knew his army pretty well. I was just kind of going with the flow of it and hoping for the best. But he played it super smart. He played for the late game. He was going second, so he knew that was a pretty big advantage on I believe it was the mission conversion. And I actually barely squeaked that one out. So shout out to Ken. Thank you for an awesome round 3. And the final score there was 84 to 80 in my favor. So really tough, really tight game. And even by WTC standards, which I always focus on, just as I prepare for, you know, the journey to WTC 2023, that's a 10-10. So I mean, you know, that's something to keep in mind for the future, and something that we should all keep in mind in terms of an interesting matchup for Blood Angels. So you know, we're feeling pretty solid. You know, 3-0 day one, coming back off of this hiatus with not many reps under my belt to practice, and I think only one true practice with this specific list, like word for word, going into this event. So then I get paired into, you know, one of my closest 40K friends. So Tom Liddy, if you're watching this, thanks for an awesome game, man. We had some good old-fashioned Blood Angel on Tau fun. And unfortunately for him, we were playing player place terrain on the Scouring, so we're just gonna leave it at that. No, I'm kidding, but it was a really fun game. He played actually really well. He kept things super tight. He placed his terrain super intelligently. He knew basically, you know, what my list wants to do. I mean, we're only staying in the same room together, you know, up in Sudbury, so we had a lot of time to talk about it and break things down. But no, he just knew what to do. He had a good game plan. He stuck to it. He looked for early points. He was looking for points to deny me where and when he could. But overall, the game, I believe, just kind of, you know, slipped away from him towards that mid to late game, as I tend to usually do with my list if I can press and get into that mid board. So I believe the final score, and I don't really remember the final here, but I believe it was like 89 to 67 or something like that. So, or 86 to 69, one or the other. Again, really close game, super tough. And shout out to him for an awesome round 4. And, you know, we had a good laugh, and definitely a lot of great banter through the course of the game, and obviously a fun car ride home for for both of us there. And then that led me into the finals, which was definitely a really interesting final. I didn't expect you know, to play a mirror match in the final, so we had a, you know, good old-fashioned Blood Angel on Blood Angel game. And again, just massive shout out to my opponent, Jake Burnett. He's been doing really well as of late with Blood Angels, from what I've been, you know, seeing or I've gathered as of late. And you know, one of my best friends, his name's Christian Vavarutsos. He's actually an excellent Chainsword call player. He's actually played him twice now in a last couple of events, and I think Jake's got the better of him both times. But Christian's a very experienced player into Blood Angels, and for him to, you know, be, you know, for Jake to come out on the other side of those games, even if there's a mistake that happens here or there, or, you know, a couple of, you know, swings that could have happened, you know, Jake had to have been doing pretty well to do that, because Christian's very knowledgeable of the Blood Angels. So that kind of told me a lot, to be honest. And that means, you know, this guy is obviously the real deal. So you know, massive shout out to him for a great run, and obviously making it to the finals, beating an excellent Team Canada, or Team Canada player in the past. His name's Nicholas Blackburn. He's an amazing Thousand Suns and Demons player. So it was a bit interesting to see that matchup, see this gentleman make it there, and now all of a sudden you're second guessing yourself, like, who's the real Blood Angel? Who's the true chapter master here? But jokes aside, it was a really fun game. I was actually able to go first, and just basically we played Precious Artifacts, where you move objectives and are basically given 15 free what's it called, like secondary points on the primary, so free 15 there. And was just able to kind of lock his Devastators up. I was able to obviously have an advantage with Fury of the Lost, giving me a bit of a better secondary game plan into him. He had a more of a traditional Blood Angel list without the Death Company heavy build, and we kind of saw that it was just going to come down to really who's playing the secondary game a bit better and who can actually generate a better tempo in the midboard. And I was just able to, because going first, I think, did actually make a pretty big impact. Then I was able to, just kind of dictate threat ranges. I was able to kind of push where I needed to. If he wanted to press into me, that allowed me to kind of either step back or punish him for it if he came a little bit too close. So, again, great game, really fun overall. I think I took it 94 to like 76. So again, wasn't even that bad of a game. It was actually pretty close, all things considered, and was able to come out 5-0 with the GT win. And also have to super big shout out to Ridvan Scary Martinez, because he actually went 5-0 as well, finishing in second right behind me. So we were both undefeated. So no shadow round, unfortunately, to decide the true winner. Maybe him and I can have a behind closed doors game to fight for that title. So we'll see. But shout out to obviously my fellow Team Canada player Ridvan there for a great run as well. And I was able to nick it away on battle points. So overall, was really happy with how my list played. Was happy with the Death Company build. I'm looking onward and upward to obviously evolving my list. I'm someone who doesn't like to stay too happy with exact lists. I know that probably sounds crazy because my lists are always like 1,800 points of the same things, but I take pride in that last 200 points of what I think the meta requires, or if I have to shake things up a bit and alter maybe 300 to 400 points of it to make sure that it really suits the meta. I really take pride in the fact that I think it's really important to adapt and not stay too complacent and too stagnant on one specific build for too long at least. So that concludes the GT recap. Like I said, people, if you have any questions, if you want me to dive into one of the games a bit more, maybe a couple of things. Sorry if I don't have any pictures on it. I went there for like a little bit of like a me time event. I'm sure you guys all can hopefully understand that. I just want to enjoy my 40K without having to record or take pictures of the table, because I know I've been doing that a bit often for the last year. So I appreciate the understanding on that, but please, any questions, feel free to ask. And I kind of, wanted to dive into the next topic, which is Blood Angels today. So where do we stand? How do we feel? Where are we in the meta? And I feel like there's a long drawn out conclusion to that. But overall, I feel like it's really just going to make a big difference in terms of how we're going to be playing into these newer armies that came out, like Votann, Demons obviously making a big splash. And not only that, it's just a lot of other armies adapting to play into them. So now you're seeing different archetypes of other classic armies, such as Drukhari, such as Tyranids. Now obviously there's been some changes there, so Kraken seems to be a bit more on the front foot there for them. But now you're just seeing a lot of different armies change their archetypes, so you must be aware of that. So don't just prepare for what the new hotness might be. Take a look at what the armies are around you, how they're evolving, and how if you're not going to these majors, super majors, and whatnot, how can you adapt to your local meta? What are people bringing, and how can you deal with that? Now, I've always said this since the beginning. There's list tailoring, and then there's meta adapting, and I think they're two very, very different things. So obviously understanding your local meta is a huge thing. So just take a look at the guys you play against, take a look at what you have. And this is obviously if you're trying to find that success on the tabletop. Now, if you're just there for a good time, I always am the biggest I'm a firm believer of just play what you enjoy and don't take the hottest meta things. I've ran a lot of things in the past that aren't the hottest meta things, and I've been able to make them work because I just sprinkle them into my 2,000 point list. But overall, just make sure you're enjoying your 40K with the units that you want to see on the table. But going back to kind of like the meta, like a big thing that I have to keep in mind now is because I will be going to LVO in at the end of January, so that's kind of where my focus is, and I actually have a GT the weekend before as a bit of a warm up. Just for some reps with my LVO list before I go into it. And it's going to be very interesting. I know LVO has made some, pretty big announcements of what's going to be included, what's not included, how we're going to be using terrain, and some rules for them. So definitely a lot to keep in mind. And that's another thing to keep in mind as well. When you should, when you're making your list, keep in mind what board are you going into. I actually don't think it's the right thing to have a list I can play on any board. I actually feel like it's better to play into a specific board. So if you're going to a GW event and you're going to have 4 large ruins, most likely 2 middle fixed L's, how can you build a list that can play into that? Can you get your firing angles if you're using a shooting army or a more shooty version of a Blood Angel list, for example? How are you going to do that? What kind of units are you taking? Are Inceptors the right call? Or do you want to bring vehicles? A lot to keep in mind. So for me now, as I'm trying to fight for as high a place I can possibly finish, there's a lot to keep in mind with that terrain and how I can actually get the best out of my army and on that tabletop. So usually, obviously, faster units will always favor the game in general. So that's obviously going to be top of mind, like how my normal lists usually are run. But now there is obviously a big debate of, is the Death Company list, where I've been running the 3 Death Company with Lemartes in a battalion, is that the right call? Because I actually don't like the Vanguard Patrol version of the list. It's just not my style and doesn't give me the tools that I feel like I need to play the game. But now we have to take a look at the meta. How are things going to change? So there is obviously a little bit of patience required when we're approaching big events like this, and whether or not the meta is going to be super crazy changed by the time we get there, and maybe there's some last minute announcements being made. But there's a lot to keep in mind with in general, understanding the terrain pack, taking the time to really look at the board and how you're going to set up your terrain and where your staging points are. So I think it's really important for us to just have a good idea of how our army is going to essentially be on our half of the table, because that we can always control, of how we start our games of 40K and essentially how we're going to approach each mission. So if we can just focus on that, I think that's really a good starting point. And again, if you guys have any questions on maybe mission approach, stuff like that, I do obviously I do some form of coaching here and there. When I have time, I'm trying to get back into it now. But for quick questions or just something I can maybe touch on briefly, always leave a comment, and I'll do my best to kind of get back to you when possible. So without further ado, the last and final topic, what is next? I already alluded to it. In January, I have it's a big Toronto Open happening in on the Danforth in Toronto, which most of you know where that is, but it's Greek town, and I'm Greek, so I'm happy I'm going to have some souvlakis after the game, after the days. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of really great people from the Toronto and just Ontario meta in general. So that's going to be a great warm up, and obviously this is all leading up for the grand finale at the LVO in Vegas. So really looking for to have my best tournament there if possible, knocking on wood, seeing how far I can take our Sons of Sanguinius. I've been fortunate to be pushing as hard as I can with them to see how I can do, and it's the only army I've ever played, as you guys obviously know. So I don't really know what to expect. It's going to be a lot of cool moments, I'm sure, meeting a lot of great people. You're in the room with some of the world's best, or it is going to be the world's best. So I'm just looking for a great time, 6 fun rounds. Don't set the bar too high. I mean, you can get into the what about a shadow round and what about the third day. I just want to start off by having a great game 1. So let's just keep it simple for now. And obviously, if you guys have any questions in terms of tournament prep, maybe if you guys want to see a video in the future how I prepare for a tournament, an RTT versus a GT versus a major, super major, I can break all that down into a video and kind of show you guys the ropes. If for those of you who are a bit newer and maybe a bit intimidated by some of these larger events, definitely nothing to be intimidated about. We're so fortunate to be in such a great community of like-minded individuals, and there's always going to be the outliers in any single community and of any game of any type you've ever been in. But we are fortunate to have the vast majority be absolutely stand-up individuals. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to some of these top players, whether it be Blood Angels or just other top players in general, because I think they're a lot nicer than a lot of people think. So anyway, guys, just wanted to say thank you so much for your patience. Hopefully this video brought a bit more insight. Like always, please like, share, subscribe, so I can keep on helping the channel grow. I'm gonna try my best to get back into the a bit more of a frequent release in terms of content. And without further ado, let's chalk it up to the end here for now, and we'll see you guys in the next one.